Long before the white man came to Canada's Queen Charlotte Islands, whales, bears, seals, birds, and the Haida Indians quietly living there. And the village of Kung was a peaceful but busy place.
Well, Nathan Harbor is sort of a unique area on the north coast of the Queen Charlotte Islands. We call this island Graham Island, which of the whole archipelago, this is the largest island of the group. And the Nathan Harbor is situated about basically 1/3 of the way west across from west to east. And it's actually kind of a unique feature because it's fairly shallow. It's only about 40 to 50 feet through most of it. So it's fairly shallow that way, and there's a lot of stream speed in through here. So Kung is the site of an old village that was occupied up until about the turn of the 20th century. This is a drawing that was done about 20 years ago for a big book that was published about the Haida. Well, the village of Kung is located in probably one of the most beautiful settings on Haida Gwaii. They've got the splendid sandy beach up there, and they're close. They have to be close to a supply of water, so there's a nice stream that comes out back inside the bay where they can get their fresh water. They need to have proximity to the salmon stream so that when the salmon come back in the fall, then they can harvest their salmon on the beach, because everything happens by water. They use canoes for all their transportation, so they have to have a suitable beach that they can get up and down on the beach with the tide. The tides in this harbor range around a 17-18 foot change, so pretty big tides. This particular mortuary is the one we're standing right beside here, and as you look across you see how it's all laid sort of shoulder to shoulder. If you can picture, these black spots are the totem poles that sat in front of the houses and told the stories of the families that lived. This is a single mortuary pole. It sits very prominently at the very point tip of the village here, and it's got, if you picture it 100 years ago without all these younger trees growing here, it had a very prominent place. Only the significant elders, chiefs, family chiefs would be buried in a mortuary. Like you look up top here, they cut a space inside. They built a special cedar box, a bentwood cedar box, that would contain the remains and the bones of the person. They put them inside that box and seal it up. And then that box will be placed up inside the notch in the top of the post. This is a triple mortuary pole. I don't know whether that means the person was even more significant, but a triple mortuary required, of course, 3 posts. They would have 2 taller posts on the outside and a shorter post in the middle, which gave them space for a big box to put the remains inside. After the Haidas abandoned it, after the people left here, pretty much all grew up in Sitka spruce. But inside here in the site of Kung, the spruce have grown into some weird and wonderful shapes. This is one of my favorite trees. I call it the octopus tree. This is a Sitka spruce that's, for some reason or other, decided to branch out into several different trunks part way up. But every time I come here with people, there's always a different interpretation of what might have caused that, from the spiritual and the supernatural through to various biological explanations for it. Now this is a very old house pit where a longhouse once stood. You can see the depression in the ground here. It's rectangular. You get a rough sense. It's probably about 25 feet square approximately. And the pit was basically put in before the house was built. Traditionally you'd have the longhouse frontal pole would be sitting right in front of the house. So you'd come through, there'd be a hole in the front of the frontal pole, and you go down in through the door. That would be the entrance to the house. There'd be a landing inside. The pit in the center would be the fire pit down in the bottom, and then up in the top of the roof would be a smoke hole for the smoke to go out through, and then all the way around the outside would be a bench type space where people would sleep, because the whole extended family stayed inside the longhouse. At the very end, opposite the door, would be the head of the household. Would that be their space there? The household chief would live up there. If they had any slaves, they would be closer to the door, and then the rest of the family would be along the sides. The floor and the fire pit was the sort of this central place. That's where the food was prepared, the cooking was done, warmth came from. Inside here, you can actually see one of the beams of the longhouse lying down inside the pit, and the other beam, part of it, is over there. I'm standing in the bottom of the house pit of a house that was known as a house that can hold a great crowd of people. I'm standing right beside one of the interior beams. There were a 2-beam style longhouse. So this beam would have spanned from the corner post, the support post right here, all the way back to there. Down inside here, the hot fire pit would have been right about here. And then up in the roof then would be a huge hole that the smoke could go up through. The chief's space, living space, would be over here at the head of the longhouse. The totem pole would be standing right in front. Well, this totem pole is all constructed in red cedar, which is what the Haida traditionally use to do their totem poles. And the Haida art has a wonderful grandness to it. The scale and the heads are big, and it's just a beautiful symmetry. But in this pole here that tells the story, you have up here, obviously, the big central figure is the killer whale chief, and on the back of the killer whale is Nana Singbeat's wife, who was kidnapped by the killer whale chief.
The simple life of the Haida at Kung village slowly disappeared with the coming of civilization. It was a sad ending.
Through that contact with the Europeans, the Haida picked up smallpox, tuberculosis, all kinds of diseases that they had no natural immunity to. And as people got sick and died, the survivors eventually started moving until basically by about 1900, the only villages that were still inhabited were Masset, which is up here in the north coast, and Skidegate, which is down in the south end of Graham Island. It's figured now, they're looking at the occupation sites throughout the islands, whether for food gathering or for full-time villages. They figured that there could have been as many as 10,000 Haida on Haida Gwaii prior to European contact, and by about 1880 they were down to about 900.